Habari Gani, Ujamaa. Habari Gani, Ujamaa. Greetings. Welcome to a Kwanzaa Minute, Day 4. Today's principle is Ujamaa. Ujamaa is cooperative economics. And today, we've already got lit the candle for Umoja, the black candle in the center, the red candle, the first red candle on the left for Kujichagulia, the first green candle on the right for Ujamaa, and now we light the second candle on the left, red candle on the left, for Ujamaa, cooperative economics. The proverbial poem for the proverb for the day is, when the bee comes to your house, let her have beer. You may want to visit the bee's house one day. And that's a Congolese proverb. So the proverbial poem for the day we call Share and Share Alike. When I visit the bee has beer for me. And when the bee visits me, I return the flavor. What comes from the earth belongs to all. Share and share alike. Let's work together and share the wealth. We like to call that reciprocity. I give to you, you give to me. That's the way it should always be. What comes from the earth belongs to all. Share and share alike. Let's work together and share the wealth. The need to have more than another is no more than unadulterated greed. Why do you need more than me when you can't even use it all? What comes from the earth belongs to all. Share and share alike. Let's work together and share the wealth. When we finally learn to share the wealth with one another, let us pray it's not too late to save the planet and the human race. What comes from the earth belongs to all. Share and share alike. Let's work together and share the wealth. Tutaonana, Nia.
See, the thing that's so deep about this whole process is that we got diabetes out of control, we got hypertension out of control, we got heart disease, we got people, we're teaching people how to eat, we're teaching people that you got to do all these health and wellness things, which are important for you, and you'll be healthy in general. That's what we need to be talking about. They're pushing the hell out of this vaccine, but it's about the whole health and wellness. And because the healthcare industry has neglected so many of us for so long, I might want to be suspicious of something. All of a sudden, you want me to be first. Now, hey, why don't we be first and talk about, making diabetic care, more expansive, providing the funding for infant mortality, providing the funding for all the things that are affecting us in ways that they shouldn't be affecting us. So that's the answer. The answer is go back to the drawing board and take all this profit, take a lot of this profit out of it and make sure everybody get health care, And, it's like the same thing, as long as you have a country that's not valuing everybody, it's not a country that's humane and it's destined to not live a long time. It's just not going to work. You can't devalue most of your population in favor of profit and expect you're going to survive for many years. You're just not. It just don't work like that. And unfortunately, that's what this country does.
Because it's like I'm interviewing, I'm recording everything, and it's great. We can use all of this. What can we do for each other? Like, our neighbors, as a people, what can we do for each other that, because we automatically, when people talk about health, the first thing you think about is your own. You know what I mean? First you think about, I got to do this for me, I got to do this for me, I got to get me together. I'm sure you got a lot of patients coming to you. They worried. You know what I'm saying? Some of my best friends come to you, but what can we do for each other, as neighbors, as friends? We do as neighbors, brothers, sisters, people of the same community, people of the same heritage. What can we do to help each other?
Yes. Yeah, I think that we need to organize ourselves in our communities in such a way where we reestablished the kind of contact that we used to have. There was a time where communities, were really communities that we knew each other. We had relationships with one another. We helped take care of each other's children and so on and so forth. I grew up in Walnut Hills in an environment like that. I think some of us who may have a little bit more understanding of, quote unquote, the healthcare system, whatever we're dealing with, but healthcare system in this particular case, look to contact other people in the community, look to establish times where we can meet and talk about wellness, talk about what the issues are that each of us are having and how to address those issues, and just have dialogues. So I think reestablishing connections between one another is a very important thing, which I don't think would be very hard. I mean, I speak to my neighbors, we just don't have the kind of relationships that perhaps were there at one point. No question that we're there at one point. So I think we had to have more open communication between one another, and then let that lead into having meetings and people coming together and voicing what their concerns are. And out of that, people have certain understandings about what's going on in the community, be it the conversations we're having, be it on some other aspect of health and wellness. And that can be determined by, the participants in the meeting, and those things spread, and that becomes like a model for how we can move something like that from community to community. So I think that kind of communication, at our health centers, at our churches, at places where people congregate, and try to build something from there. Yeah, but I just don't think we touch each other enough, like we used to. Touching each other, having confidence, having, knowing that your brother, your sister has your back. I think reestablishing those kinds of things are very, very important, because keeping it real, it's going to have to come from us. Those kinds of things are going to have to come from us. We have to be the force to move things on one level or another, or whether it's getting more support from the outside, whether we can generate the kinds of things that we need to do. I always say that, for those of us, quote unquote, who move away someplace else and want to live someplace, that's okay, but if you donate 2 or 3 hours a week, to, where the night is, where most of us are, that's a good thing. All we got to do is, all we need is time and effort from all of us, will make a difference. We get to get that critical mass of people, and we can move forward a certain way. We just so unengaged oftentimes with what's going on with our brothers and sisters. It makes us vulnerable. It makes us not able to really be a community. Because of that kind of thing. We have to be engaged in what our issues are, and each of us has to be involved in that in such a way where we're bringing something to the table so that we can make this thing change. It has to be something like that, in my opinion. My name is Dr. Kent Robinson. I'm a specialist in internal medicine, board certified. I focus on preventive and nutritional aspects of health and wellness in my practice. I can be reached at area code 513-585-9500. I practice in Cincinnati, Ohio.
The problem here now is we're learning who owns the intellectual property of Black imagination. Now is going to be a 21st century issue. Jazz is great, but who owns it? Blues is great, but who owns it? And then if this is not capital, no wonder I can't make my own movies. Who owns the capital? If Black people have produced so much, cultural wealth in, leave sport out, just in jazz and blues and gospel and American music that goes all over the world? How come they don't have a cent of that capital in order to extend and transform and transaction the future and the present imaginative process? How come they can't finance their own movie? Why are they still poor? If I even only owned Billie Holiday's music, I would make 20,000 movies. I'm sorry. So who owns the intellectual product of black people? Intellectual literature, even now, black publishers, for example.
Gye-Nyame is a name that each of us need to know, and we need to sketch it in our minds. And if you have not seen the movie Sankofa, shame on you. You need to go get it. You need to buy it. Do not just watch it on YouTube. Buy it. Support this man's art and support what he's doing, because this brother changes lives. Because after you see Sankofa, you will never be the same. Now let's get this adventure started. Brother Hatim at GNJ.media. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Right now, we got Gye-Nyame breaking down the battlefield of the 21st century, and that is the battlefield of intellectual property. Not just intellectual property worldwide, but black intellectual property. Who will own it in the 21st century? We have created tons and tons and megatons of creative products. We created jazz, we created blues, we created hip hop. And the question that needs to be part of the argument that we are having in this reparations battle and all these other battles, who owns that intellectual property? We got white companies that have been building up for the last 100 years their war chests, because in a sense, they kind of are preparing for what's coming in the future, because we're coming for our shit, right? There's a lot of intellectual property out here. And speaking of intellectual property, who owns yours, right? Are you creating? If you are creating, then who owns yours? Have you created a brand? Have you created a tribe that can surround and not only eat off of what you're creating, but be there to protect it? Because people are coming from it, family. Because I keep telling y'all, content is king. Family, listen, a lot of y'all are sitting on these brilliant projects, these brilliant ideas, and you're just sitting on them. Like you, I mean, it's like you the goose with the golden egg, and you just too scared to stand up and share the golden egg with the world. Get up off your ass. Let everybody see the golden eggs that you laying. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people may be able to benefit from what you have, what you're trying to hide. You know what I'm saying? And we have to stand up not only for our own creativity, but we got to stand up for the creativity of our ancestors, because our ancestors left us a gold mine, but many of us don't realize it's a gold mine because we have been excluded from that part of the business. Family, let me tell you, right now the music industry is making billions off of the creativity of your ancestors. Right now the movie industry is making billions off the creativity of your ancestors. Right now every industry out there in some form or fashion is benefiting off of us, and we're not benefiting from the fact that they are able to benefit. They have established their borders, and they have to establish what they own. So they own the jazz recordings, they own the blues recordings, they own the movies. Family, one, we got to wage war to get back what's ours, and then on top of that, we got to establish our borders and start protecting what we are and will be currently creating. Many of you right now are nurturing babies that will grow up to be sensations, that will grow up and be the next Michael Jacksons, the next Spike Lees, the next whoever. He asked the question, if we have all of this creative capital, why is it that we can't finance our own movies. He said if he owned Billie Holiday's catalog alone, he will make 20,000 movies. Why? Because he will own the rights to all of the stuff that she has, and that money, when other people want to use Billie Holiday stuff, will have to come to him. But it's not coming to our community. It's financing other people's children's dreams, not ours. Family. We need to start talking about ownership. Ownership. And the first thing that you can establish is the ownership of your own stuff, and the money that we start compiling from what we start owning as groups, as families, as tribes. We could go on and throw some of that into a pot, and have a pot so that we could go out and start fighting for the other intellectual property that truly belongs to us and should be financing us. Yo, this is Brother Hatem, and if you have a creative idea that you are sitting on, that you want to bring to the public, right, and you need help with that, you need to check with us at Gye-Nyame Journey. Inboxes on our Facebook page, inboxes on our YouTube page. Hit us up at gnj.media. You know what I'm saying? Let us know what help you need. We can help you with a social media campaign. We can help you develop your podcast. We can help you develop your streaming platform. We can help you create commercials. We can help you with your ebooks and your e-courses. That's what we do. So go and plug in and join the tribe. Watch the next video. Watch the next video. Watch the next video. No, I'm just joking, family. Family, thank you for joining us. Be sure to catch us on the next video, family. Peace. Watch the next video. Watch.
Greetings. My name is Dr. Kent Robinson. I'm an internal medicine specialist, practice medicine in Cincinnati, Ohio. My particular focus, in addition to internal medicine, is preventive and nutritional treatments for wellness. And I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to be here to talk about wellness as a part of our Kwanzaa celebration, our cultural holiday, whose principles emanate through us and all over the community and the nation and actually the world. The principles of Kwanzaa ring forth in many ways, and as we practice them in our life, we understand that wellness is a part of those principles. We are more appropriate in our unity and our collective work and responsibility and our faith and our purpose if we feel good, if we're well. And so wellness, I think, is a very important aspect of celebrating Kwanzaa. The foods that are always prepared during the feast are always very healthy and nutritional, and I certainly enjoy that aspect of celebrating the principles also. When we talk about wellness, we talk about physical wellness, emotional wellness, mental wellness, and spiritual wellness. And let me be clear that it does not mean that one always feels good. Wellness implies resiliency, that we have the ability, if we're not feeling a certain way, we have that ability to think about what's going on with us and make some adjustments either in our life in one way or another in order to reach a new state of wellness, a new state of being where we're once again feeling good. Now, if we talk physical wellness, we're usually talking about exercise and how we eat. We should stay physically active, aerobic exercising, maybe a half hour a day. If one is not engaged in an activity such as work or other activities that give them that kind of physical activity, I would say at least 30, 45 minutes a day. Walking, biking, elliptical, something that revs up the cardiovascular system. I think that's very, very important. We also want to do some level of strengthening in terms of exercise, and we want to do some stretching and also some flexibility. So make exercise an integral part of one's day as it contributes to our wellness. Eating always gets a lot of attention, and we know partly we are what we eat. And when I say eat, I mean real food, natural food, live food. Lots of fruits and vegetables in their form as they come from nature is very important in our day-to-day food regimen. I think nuts and beans and whole grains are very important. I think a diet should be plant-based. I don't say that one has to be a vegetarian or vegan, but I think that meat or animal products should be limited. And when they are consumed, they should be consumed as naturally as possible. In other words, the chicken, for an example, should be raised in such a way where it's not been tainted with antibiotics and hormones, which changes its whole relationship as far as health is concerned. So making sure that anything that we consume, particularly if it's related to an animal product, is something that has not been changed with additives that will make it potentially harmful to the body. And that goes for plants as far as that's concerned too. We want to do plants, we want to do our fruits and vegetables from an organic source. There's a website that I often refer people to. It's called ewg.org. It's a government website, but it's actually a good website. It talks about fruits and vegetables and other plant-based food that should always be consumed only organic, because if you consume it other than that, you're getting those chemicals. And chemicals in food can affect us adversely. So eating healthy, eating balanced is very, very important for our wellness. Now, another aspect of our wellness, emotions. We should keep ourselves balanced as best we can. Our emotions related to our stress and related to how we handle situations on a day-to-day basis. And certainly there are many stressors, and it's obviously stress we can't avoid. But if we run into situations where we're able to, or we're not able to handle a situation that causes a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, then we want to make sure that we handle that situation, or we do something that helps not be in such a stressful state of existence. One thing I always say is if we get emotional about something, we had to understand what our feelings are about that particular thing. If it's something that we can resolve, then we resolve it to the best of our ability. If in fact we can't resolve it, then sometimes we have to transcend it. We have to always remember that we can control how we respond to any situation outside of us. We can't always control that situation that's outside of us, but we can control our response to it. Why is that important? Stress is important to manage a certain way because stress affects our overall health. It affects our immunity, our immune system. It affects how we handle, how our heart works, how our blood pressure is, how our blood sugar is, how many things are, because stress, if it's uncontrolled and not regulated inside of ourselves, creates a hormonal dynamic inside of us that will oftentimes cause problems. Can cause, again, the blood pressure to be higher, the blood sugar to be higher, can cause stiffness in blood vessels if the stress is continual and not resolved. So we want to make sure we deal with stress a certain way. All emotions are what they are. They're emotions, and there are many emotions. There are 8 basic emotions, and all the rest of the emotions come from them, combinations of them. But and I can't say any one emotion is bad. It's just that we had to handle them a certain way in order to be able to move forward and not let things like anger, for an example, affect us in a bad way. We all may become angry, but we had to recognize how to resolve whatever that issue is that's causing anger, or transcend it if we can't. Mentally is very important to consider how we think, how we process, because being very positive in the midst of most situations is a very, very important thing. We want to make sure that we always have an outcome. We're always thinking through whatever that thing is that we're working with. We always want to make sure that the cup, I always like to say, is never half empty. It's always half full. It's the same level. But the positive side of that is that we can move forward and do what we need to do, half full cup. Now, being involved in our day-to-day activities in a way that is creative and that allows us to have some level of control over what we do is very, very important. And I'll relate to a specific example as it relates to going to a doctor, for an example. One should always have in mind what they're concerned about, have specific questions, have done some research, and then when the doctor offers advice, make sure that you can ask questions about that advice. Make sure that you are able to think about it, and you and the doctor come up with a plan that certainly includes your thoughts and your ideas as far as what is suggested that you do. Because remember, what you do is what your wellness is, what your process is, what you need to take away and use in order to make sure that you are doing those things that you need to do for you. So make sure that you're involved in any decisions as it relates to your healthcare. Spirituality is very complex, and it's related to how one recognizes that there is a higher essence that creates the universe, has created the universe, and involved in indirectly or directly aspects of our existence. However one looks at that higher power, I think it's important for us to feel like that we're in tune with what that is. So as we move forward, we're able to have that as a point of reference. We're doing what we need to do. And it's in alignment with how we view what that higher essence is. So very, very important, I think, as part of our wellness. Now, as we talk about our physical wellness, again, diet and eating, our emotional wellness, how we handle stresses, our mental wellness, how we think about things and how we move forward in a positive way and are creative about our own personal wellness and our life in general, and our spirituality, our relationship to the higher power. These things are important. These aspects are important because one thing that we're faced now with is this virus called COVID-19. And COVID-19 affects our immune system in an interesting way. This kind of virus, it's a coronavirus. And there are, if you've had a cold, you may have had a coronavirus. But this particular coronavirus has different properties, whether it came from the markets of China or from a lab or wherever it may have come from. It's clear that this virus is very contagious. And it also can wreak havoc in our immune system. And that in and of itself is why I want to say that we really need to focus on having a healthy immune system. And we have a healthy immune system by doing the things that I've been mentioning, eating healthy, live food, fruits and vegetables, like I said, beans, whole grains, minimizing anything that's not coming from the earth the way it should come from the earth. And making sure we stay away, particularly the fast food circuit and the processed foods. Anything that's enriched, like an enriched flour product, I stay away from. I stay away from fast foods in general. I would make sure, again, every day that I drink a lot of water and follow some of the other tenets that I mentioned earlier. The importance of handling stress, the importance of eating right, the importance of being physically active, the importance of having a healthy mindset helps our immunity stay strong and balanced. So if we contract something like COVID, we're able to handle it better. Being healthy, being well, does not mean that one does not have hypertension, one does not have diabetes or even heart disease. It just means that one maximizes or optimizes what they have in terms of controlling those aspects. They keep a normal blood sugar, for an example. They keep a normal blood pressure. They do it as natural as possible. Sometimes medicine may be necessary, but many times one can do a heck of a whole lot, to lessen any medication needed if they're following a healthy lifestyle. Keeping the weight right, is another thing. Relative ideal body weight for an individual is very important. So the immune system is stronger if one is doing those things that are healthy and balanced, and that health and balance has to do with one being able to recognize if they're out of balance. Sleep is important. Getting adequate sleep. That could affect our immune system. So we want to make sure that we're doing those things that are most important for us. Now, as this virus, goes through our community, and it's unfortunate that it is the way it is. And we know that because of systemic racism and because of these things are entrenched in our society, we get these diseases perhaps more often, and we also don't get the coverage, the care sometimes that we may need. There's hesitancy to get or go to a doctor, oftentimes or a hospital because of past experiences. And sometimes we just don't have a health professional that we can trust and rely on. So it's very, very important for us to take care of ourselves. It's very, very important for us to make sure that if, for example, you contract the coronavirus, if you're short of breath, the big picture, with the virus that suggests that there's some problems. If you're short of breath, that doesn't go away. If your temperature is elevated, 102, 103, and it doesn't go down, or if you're coughing and you can't get rid of it, or if you're feeling so weak that you just can't function, if you're having those kinds of symptoms, you want to seek some coverage. You want to go to the hospital to be evaluated. You don't want to wait too long. If you start feeling those symptoms and you can see you're not going to shake it, you know how it is. If you're feeling something to say, wow, this is different. I ain't felt like this before. You need to go get it checked out. And that would be a very, very important thing. Now, in terms of, again, not having having disorders like high blood pressure, diabetes, hypertension, doesn't mean that you can't handle the coronavirus. But what we need to do is go back and look at making sure that we manage ourselves well. And unfortunately, again, in this environment, because of our exposures, because of our lack of accessibility to healthcare on multiple levels, we're going to be challenged oftentimes. But I will say, go to the hospital if you're not feeling well and you're thinking symptoms may be related to corona or anything as far as that's concerned. It's very important not to let something go too far. That's why it's very important, even starting young, making sure you're eating healthy, making sure you're exercising, and making sure you're doing those things that are good for you. Back to the COVID virus, vitamin D has been shown to be an important vitamin, and it's also a hormone. There's no tissue in the body that doesn't have receptors for vitamin D on it. Vitamin D stimulates our immune system in a very interesting way and causes our immune system to do things that are positive inside of us. So vitamin D supplement, I would suggest, I think that's very important. The amount you take can vary. I'm going to say 2,000 international units of vitamin D3 daily, I think is important. You can also get it from fortified cereals, for an example. You can get it from seafood. If you eat seafood, the salmon, the herring, the sardines. You can get it from, not too many sources of good vitamin D, the sunlight, but we just don't get as much sunlight as it would be good for us to get. But sunlight is very important too. The bottom line here is that people who have low vitamin D levels tend to have a more severe outcome as it relates to COVID. And so we want to make sure that we have vitamin D levels that are up to snuff. And if you don't know what your level is, take vitamin D. You're not going to get vitamin D toxic because most of us, about 90% of people of color in this country are vitamin D deficient. So that's a very important thing. I've talked about rest, very important, and can't overemphasize how important it is to manage our stress and how important it is to keep a positive attitude and recognize that as we move forward in life, we can do what we need to do to be well and live principles of Kwanzaa throughout the year. My name is Dr. Kent Robinson. I'm a specialist in internal medicine, board certified. I focus on preventive and nutritional aspects of health and wellness in my practice. I can be reached at area code 513-585-9500. I practice in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Welcome, family, to another session of Kwanzaa Decades in Review. And with us today, let me introduce myself. I'm Kwame Keesler, and nation builder in the Tawi family village, and member of the Gye-Nyame tribe. And with us today, we have Elder Kemba Nzinga, affectionately called Mama Kemba, and she will introduce herself, and we will get into the interview. Go ahead, Mama Ken, introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Kemba Nzinga, elder in the Tawi family village. And I'm ready for the interview, Kwame.
All righty. So, Mama Kemba, how were you introduced into Kwanzaa? When were you introduced to Kwanzaa? And what made you feel it was important enough to bring into your household and for the community to celebrate?
Okay. My first Kwanzaa, I think, just out of college. It was around that time. I was in a dance company, and we were invited to perform at Kwanzaa. And this is when Dr. Nesbitt, who was the director of the Black Studies Extension Center at The Ohio State University, had Kwanzaa on Ohio Avenue at the old PAL Center. And that was my first exposure. I had never been to a Kwanzaa before, and we performed. And there were other dance companies. At that time, there were several dance companies in Columbus. And we all met there and performed for Kwanzaa. That was my first time.
And just so people have a general idea of the time period, when was Dr. Nesbitt directing the Extension Center?
Sure. It was in the 70s, and I've been trying to think about the exact year. And I actually meant to contact Elder Falani to find out when this was.
Okay. He's on the list to interview, so.
Okay, good. Because I can't remember if it was 75-ish, 6-ish, 70-something. Okay. And that was my first exposure. And after that, I think that there were Kwanzaas going on in the community, and I just started attending the Kwanzaas. And we had a Kwanzaa committee, and each year we would have host of Kwanzaa for each day. So the first Kwanzaa of the year was probably the most exciting. I mean, people may not have seen each other since the last Kwanzaa. So wow. It was pretty exciting. And what I can kind of remember is when we were at what then was the recreation center on Du Bois. Okay. Next door was it was the recreation center right in back of the Mount Vernon Plaza. Okay. And that was pretty much the first Kwanzaa for a long time when I was taking my family. And I did not miss Kwanzaa except for the year that I had Nalo, who was born on December 19th. And I didn't make it to Kwanzaa that year.
So we got We got a celebration coming up, huh?
Yes. So that was the first time that I missed. And when I went back when she was 1 year old, everybody said, "Oh, this is why we didn't see you last year." So that's the one that I missed. But other than that, my family was there at Kwanzaa, like I said, and it was very exciting because we had, like I said, some of us hadn't seen each other during the whole year and would meet at Kwanzaa. At that time, Kwanzaa was an event that our community just did not miss.
Okay. So there was something that drew you there. So what was that certain something that you were getting from Kwanzaa that, made you miss it when you couldn't be there and drew you there every year with your family in tow?
Yeah. Actually, I met my husband right before the Kwanzaa season, and I exposed him when we were dating. One of our first times dating was at Kwanzaa. I brought him to Kwanzaa, and my family used to like to tease him about that. Is this must be some serious somebody that she brought to Kwanzaa. So that was our first time. He had never been, which was right around the corner from his house. He had never been. And we met at Kwanzaa that year. And from then on, we have, practiced Kwanzaa. It was different than all of the commercial holiday Christmas stuff. And because we as a young family were trying to give our children something that had a more emphasis on our culture, it fit the bill. My husband was really concerned about what would happen if we did not, what happens if something happens to and it gets distorted. And then we've already started this with our family, so what do we do? So he was definitely somebody who was concerned about distortion or something happening in it and it wouldn't be a part of it. And come to find out, Dr. Maulana Karenga was a little concerned about that also. So he writes about making sure that it's not distorted and that people don't carry it off with commercialism. And, he writes about that. I thought that was pretty interesting that somebody who I introduced to Kwanzaa was concerned about even, some of the founding, issues.
Yeah, maintaining its authenticity.
Yes.
Integrity, as it were. But yeah, I can see that. And so that would have been in the 70s. And one of the ways, from what I understand, that you would be sure to maintain that kind of integrity was you had your own celebration at home.
Absolutely.
Tell us about that. The challenges and the rewards and,
Well, it probably came strongest once I had to miss Kwanzaa because I had just had a baby. So we did Kwanzaa at home that year. I mean, she was not even a week old.
Wow.
So,
Right.
and I did have a son that was going to be 2. So he was excited to be a part of it also. So, at almost 2 years old, he was very excited to be a part of it. We also decorated our house with the red, black, and green, and we had a chandelier in the dining room that we used to hang streamers on, red, black, and green streamers on. And to kids, that is big. That is pretty big. And they grew up with that idea that, you know, that's what you do when you celebrate Kwanzaa.
That's right.
So it was important to us to continue the tradition in the household. We would each night at dinner, we would talk about what the day is and teach them the names of the each day of Kwanzaa in Kiswahili. They enjoyed that. It was just natural for them to know Kiswahili because that's what they got at Kwanzaa. We would make things. And of course, with a toddler and a baby, making things meant my husband and I made things. So we did that. Popsicle stick boxes and coloring and preparing for this interview. I pulled out some of the old Kwanzaa activity books that we used, and they are really nice. Young people could very much appreciate arts and crafts. I mean, they do. They appreciate arts and crafts. So that's what we did.
Yeah, we're going to have to share some of those with Baba Greg and Mama Fadia.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have to. Well, we have to make plans to do that because I know we were going to do that through Mama Alona at one point. So
yes,
that's still in the works. So talk to me a little bit about the evolution of Kwanzaa that you've seen over these past couple of decades.
Well, I think that I consider myself, and I used to call it a purist, but I don't really want to use that word. What I would say is I'm older now and I like things the way I like them. And I'm okay saying that, and I'm okay being like that. I now have grandkids that I'm doing Kwanzaa with, and we're doing it the way we did it with their parents. Right. We're making things. We're learning language. And it's more important to me to give the grandkids the foundations of Kwanzaa, and as they get older, they can do the ad-libbing. Now, I think that it's important that they get the foundation and they get our concern for losing really what it is before they're exposed to, you know, the 2.0.
Right. You know, Baba Tony often talks about tradition and reason. And I will often use the saying that before we start changing the tradition,
yes,
let us understand why things were in place so that when we do add on, we can maintain that authenticity, that integrity that was meant. And so I truly understand the heart of what you're saying. And so, I mean, I know you and Mama Alona do the Kiswahili. And of course, you know, I only knew how to count for the most part. I mean, I knew the principles, but but you also studied the Medu Netra as well, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Correct.
How much of that do you still keep up with?
Well, Kwame, I haven't kept up as much as I need to. The last time, as a matter of fact, that I saw Elder Bonacci, he said, I haven't seen you. Where have you been? What are you doing? What's going on, Kimba? He really stuck it to me about what happened here. So I am behind. I try to keep up with what they're doing, but I haven't been in class in more than some years.
Well, it's quite understandable because you're doing what we're all supposed to be doing, and even us even more concentratedly, particularly in these present times, which is take advantage of this time to put into our children those cultural values, that cultural education, so that they have a true understanding of what education is. And if that education, wherever it comes from, is not building and maintaining for our people, like Kwanzaa, and like, the many, what we've come to call our cultural stabilizing holidays, then it's for naught. And so trust and believe when I tell you, I appreciate, that energy that you have and you're infusing into our children, because, this is part of the Kwanzaa story. We talk about Kwanzaa 365, and that's living it out, and so whether it's by way of the Medu Neter, Kiswahili, teaching the grands, I appreciate what you do, Mama. I appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you. I'm just doing what we, what I'm trying to follow the plan. Just trying to follow the plan.
Word.
During these times, you just want to keep everybody up, keep everybody lifted, and everybody up.
And with that, do you have any closing words for us in regard to? I have to be careful how I phrase things because Mom. I don't know. I think I told you one time. When you've come across a really cold rap when the brother is communicating you on 3 different levels, and you can pick up on each one, and that's a powerful rap there. So, with this notion of keeping our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our spirits, if that's what the term folks like to use, our emotions, our intuition, where we need to have them to move us to the next level. Do you have any closing words of wisdom for our family?
I think my standby and something that keeps me motivated is an old adage that is very sacred to me, and it's each one teach one.
Ashe. And as our people say, so let it be. As we in Gye-Nyame say, make it happen. And as we say in the Medu Neter, Amen Hatepu. Amen is satisfied. Thanks a million, Elder Kimba. I appreciate your time, and it's good catching up a little bit,
Ashe. Thank you, Kwame.
One love. All right, Hatim.
Watch the next video. Watch the next video. Watch the next video. No, I'm just joking, family. Family, thank you for joining us. Be sure to catch us on the next video, family. Peace. Watch the next video. Watch.
My name is Dorian Wingard. I am 48 years old, a proud 48 years old. Today is Wednesday, July 17th, 2019. We are in Columbus, Ohio, and in the short north neighborhood of Columbus, Ohio. My interview partner is Jessica Roach, who is the CEO of Root, Restoring Our Own Through Transformation. And my relationship to my partner is that I am her business partner, and I actually work for her too. So, your turn.
My name is Jessica Roach. My age is 44. Today's date is Wednesday, July 17th, 2019. We are in Columbus, Ohio. The name of my interview partner is Dorian Wingard. And my relationship to my partner is that he is the COO of Restoring Our Own Through Transformation, also known as Root. And he's my friend and business partner.
So, Jessica, let's start off this way. Let's set the groundwork in, or put the groundwork in, and talk about the foundation of Root. How do we get started?
In my kitchen, having a conversation, I called you up one day and I said, I need to talk to you about this idea that I have, which I've done frequently throughout the almost 20 years that we've known each other.
But why me?
Random phone calls.
Why me? You know a million people. Why'd you call me?
I don't know, because you've always been honest and I trusted you.
Okay, cool. So what happened after that when we began talking about it? Because we vaguely have different versions of recollection of this story.
Apparently it was you said, yeah, sounds like a great idea. I thought in my head that meant that you were all in, you were going to do it. I was like, great, this is perfect.
So you thought great. I thought, okay, great idea.
I think that's what happened.
Okay.
I think that's what happened because we just recently talked about
and then
this too.
What else? What happened after that? Because I'll acquiesce to that part. Let's say that happened.
Oh,
what else happened afterwards?
So we had the conversation in our kitchen. We ended up getting involved in some other work as well. You were asked to do a campaign for a mutual friend.
Oh, yeah.
And you asked me to help with that as well.
That was a bad look. That was a bad look. But yeah, okay, I remember that part too. All right.
So we had all of these things happening. We had the incorporation. I had what was considered the quote unquote first board meeting, and I reached out to you to come because, again, from this sounds like a great idea, and then actually having a little bit of a framework around some strategic planning questions that you had.
Then?
You were still in town.
Okay.
You were still in town. You said that you weren't able to make the meeting, but to let you know about future meetings.
I probably just didn't feel like doing it.
Probably. 2 years later, I'm pretty clear about that when the answer is that you're unavailable, it's that you just don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
And then actually we ended up doing more work on the campaign with one another than you were directly involved with Root. It was getting closer to the time of the election that you started getting more of your hands in to what was going on with the Root. We were having conversations about it. You were like, "Wait a minute, what are you doing? What's happening?" I mean, that's how I felt. It wasn't. I know that you didn't say that. That's totally paraphrasing.
Right. But it's close.
But it was like, "Wait a minute, where are you at? What are you doing? What? How did we get from this conversation?" That was what I thought in my head.
And what am I now active in? What have I been committed to?
And it was really after the election because I remember you told me, you said the day after election, that's it.
Yeah, so this was like November of 17, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so why did we decide to do this? What motivated the need for Root?
Because
in your mind?
I think what the concept of Root when I brought it to you came out of clearly some traumatic experiences that I had had and traumatic experiences that I had had with clients that I had already previously taken care of in my 18 years of doing birth work.
Yeah.
Um,
Old.
I'm
It's a long time.
not as old as you, though.
No, yeah, that's true.
It will never
That's
be.
true. That's true.
But I think that what that ended up being the connection between us and why it was that you committed, if I can say that, is because we both felt very strongly about the sanctity and the safety of the Black family.
Yeah, I remember early on the conversation was when we initially began having the conversation. I remember it resonating for me that over the past I started doing this work when I was mid-20s, so almost 20 years now, 20 plus years now. My work focusing on public policy in those areas of public education, criminal justice policy, and human services policy, dealing with this whole notion of reproductive justice from a social injustice reform perspective, an anti-racism perspective, an anti-systemic BS perspective, made more sense to me. It was a perfect dovetail into where I was anyway. And I remember thinking that Jessica Roach has always been a strong person. She's always been a strong and focused woman. She's always been a person who is an advocate for those in the community who could not very well advocate for themselves. And so it made sense for me to say, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. Let's see what happens. This would have been like the third startup that I had been working with and working on in like a 2 to 3 year period. So it made sense to do it. And so once we began to actually say, okay, clear everything out, this is what we're doing, what were your thoughts at that point? Were you happy? Were you excited? Were you scared? Were you focused? How did you approach it?
Nervous, excited, scared a little, and definitely frequently thinking, oh my God. I mean, the reality of how quickly things started coming together when you and I really finally settled in and focused on this together, or at least in my perception, right? Because we've had that conversation too. Like you said, you were focused, and I have said, I didn't know you were focused, but I'm also really, I do too many things at once. Sometimes I'm all over the place. And you know, just how the understanding of how important this really was, and that I've always said, and we've always talked about this, like this is bigger than us, and just really seeing how big that really is and what that means, and the responsibilities that go along with it. And just, I think my own personal fears has always been, I don't want to misstep, and I don't want to let us, and I mean that in the collective us, as Black people in our community, down.
Well, I remember.
I don't want to let you down.
I
get real nervous about that. I get really nervous.
Letting me down? That's not going to happen. I'm not going to let you do that because I don't want to disappoint myself. So I'm not going to let anybody else do that. But I remember thinking, okay, I've seen a version of this script before. I've seen a version of this movie before. What is different? What is unique? Why is this something that I should put my talent and time to? Why should I sacrifice family, all this kind of stuff to focus on this work? Because this work's not easy work. You start doing this kind of stuff, it takes time away from everything else that you like and love, and you got to focus on it. So I remember thinking the timing was right. I remember thinking that the tenor of the conversation was right. I remember thinking that that the way we were speaking about it and what we wanted to do was right. And in my brain, there was nothing that could stop us or stand in our way from doing it. So why is this work? Well, let's back up, because I don't think we've said what this work is. So what is Root? What does Root do? And why does Root do it that way?
Root is a Black women-led reproductive and birthing justice organization dedicated to addressing Black maternal and infant health from a family-centered perspective here in Columbus, Ohio. Now, that's the
that's the elevator speech
that's
mission?
the cookie cutter elevator speech mission statement, which we've already talked about, has already evolved.
Absolutely.
And will change. Root really is here to make sure that we address what is considered the quote unquote and what has become kind of the pop culture, pop media.
The popular perspectives here,
regarding Black maternal health, Black infant health, really from a grounded Black family perspective, looking at it from the structural determinants versus what are considered the social determinants. To explain that real quick, it's really recognizing that it's not about our race, it's about racism and the institutions that have created the consequences. And why it is that we have what are considered quote unquote health disparities. And really, I think one of the things that we do the best job of is we counter that. Most of what we see with our clients, most of what it is that we see in our organization is about Black joy. It's about what families can and do look like in our community versus consistently and always being manipulated by the media with these stereotypes that get attached to us that say that we're always sick and our babies are always dying. And those things are reality, right? They're a reality from a public health perspective, and being a public health professional, I look at stats all the time. It's a reality that we're impacted negatively, but we're negatively impacted because of these issues that are in society and that are.
Well, what makes, because you use this phrase reproductive justice, and we've been in a lot of different rooms and a lot of different conversations with other folks and other organizations. What makes Root's approach to reproductive justice different? I feel like I'm like in my old radio host days.
I know.
This is like fun stuff.
I feel
right
like
now.
I'm sitting in the studio with you during your interview that I had.
I did interview you, didn't I?
Yes, you
Ooh,
interviewed
this is
me.
fun. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was interviewing you to work for you then. I didn't know that.
That's interesting. It wasn't even at all a thought, even a little tiny bit in the back of your mind?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay,
ever.
no, that's actually good. I'm glad
This
to
is
know
like,
that.
what, 2 years before we had this conversation, or a year before we had this
About
conversation?
a year. About a year before.
Yeah. That was funny. Okay. So what's the difference?
What's unique about Root? Is it what's unique about Root in that perspective?
Yeah, in terms of our approach to reproductive justice. Is it the same as everybody else?
No, because I don't think that that's possible. I think that everybody has their niche in what that might look like.
Okay.
I will say that our organization in particular is one of the few that I've seen that is very distinctly run by a Black woman and a Black man working in conjunction with one another.
Yeah, I haven't seen that any place we've been
I don't know
yet.
Oh, one place out in San Francisco.
Okay.
Because we're starting to do work with them.
Well, then there's that.
Yeah.
Then there's that. Okay. All right.
But really answering that question as to what it is that defines and what we look like and development of our family structures and the necessity to be able to have those voices. I think that it's also really important and unique to point out that we do a lot when we're talking about how different systems impact our health. So we do a lot of work around law enforcement violence as a public health issue. I mean, that's a huge thing for us.
That's a reproductive justice issue?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And we do a great deal of focus around that. I know you do. I appreciate you asking the question so that we can say that out loud.
That's good stuff, isn't it? That's good stuff.
That's cute.
Okay.
That's cute.
So, but let's kind of dovetail a little bit. The issues that we're dealing with, that we're focusing on, or that we're dealing with as an organization, not only locally but nationally, with regard to reproductive justice and that whole the deficits that we deal with in terms of infant and maternal issues and that stuff. Is this stuff new? Did it just start last year? What caused it? What created it? Is it just an anomaly that occurred?
You are interviewing me.
I am.
You are interviewing me.
You better say that story, girl. What happened? How'd we get here?
This is not new, and I always talk about that. There's nothing new under the sun, and we're talking about systems and issues that were started and created 400 years ago with the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade as it impacts the U.S. This is a 400-year timeline of the development of policies and structures that have continued to oppress us as African people in the U.S. in enslavement. And sure, there was the Emancipation Proclamation, which we're not going to get into the whole historical thought process that I have around that, but there really has never been a time where we've been able to have absolute freedom unless we create it for ourselves, for us and by us.
So what happens then? What you talked about the historical piece. If we do a real quick timeline, we're in the 1860s, and we deal with and from emancipation, and we start to deal with Reconstruction, all the other kind of stuff. Early 20th century, what were those things that led to the disparities that we see right now? Be they geographical, be they socioeconomic?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when we talk about things like the social determinants of health, which is unstable housing, right? Like one of them.
I'm really sick of that term. You know that, right? That
I
phrase.
know you are. I am too.
Yeah.
But the reality is that access to safe and affordable housing, we can't accomplish that unless we actually change the policies that were purposefully created with intent to make sure that we didn't have access to home ownership.
By whom?
Homeowners Loan Corporation.
Okay.
So 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt had a series of policies that he laid out because of the Great Depression. The Great Depression most definitely impacted, or more disproportionately impacted, white populations, European immigrant populations, because we always had these circumstances that we had to live with, and we learned to survive and thrive in.
Right.
And so with the Great Depression, we had that economic impact. FDR's administration created all of these things under the policies under the New Deal. One of them was the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which was meant to be able to create an environment where there would be better and easier access to purchasing homes. Previous to the Homeowners Loan Corporation, you had to have everybody across the board had to have 50% down of whatever the
So it was a
purchase
homeowner
price of the home.
stimulus package. of
It was a
sorts.
stimulus package,
Okay.
right? The problem was that with the stimulus package, there was also areas that had to be designated as whether they were high risk or low risk.
Okay.
And
So you had to have a good, you had to have a bad.
right,
All right.
right. So areas that were in what is the color code scheme was green, blue, yellow, and red. Green means go, just like a stop.
Is that where
Is red.
the term redlining comes from?
That's where the term redlining comes from.
Okay.
And so people that lived inside of the redlined areas were considered high risk and had very little chance of being able to originate a home loan. And if they could, it was going to be an exponentially high down payment, really high interest rate, everything possible that would keep you from being able to own a home. The dominant population within redlined areas were us. It was us as Black urban folks.
The untouchable areas, the areas that didn't have high rates of home ownership of the residents that lived in them, the absence of the supports and the resources and the systems and the structures that supported home growth areas or areas where home ownership was growing.
Yes.
Okay. And so the absence of those support services and those resources then creates what?
It creates economic instability. It creates housing instability. So you take it to the next step. Instead of always talking about our scarcity within that and how we don't have home ownership, there has to be a benefit and a balance to that. And populations that benefited from that were those that lived within the Green Line areas. Those that lived in the Green Line areas were very stereotypically white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And so they had...
This was nationwide, correct?
Nationwide, over 239 cities that we're aware of that were surveyed and subjectively redlined or greenlined, put into these zones to determine whether or not it was a high-risk area or a low-risk area to have a loan origination.
So isn't it a big leap, though, to draw a causative relationship between that historical activity and the contemporary issues that we're dealing with right now in the 21st century with regards to high infant mortality rates, high crime rates, high home instability rates, food insecurities, those kinds of things? Isn't it a big stretch to draw that bridge between the historical events you just talked about and what we're dealing with now?
I could see where for a lot of folks it's really hard to connect the dots, but if you take a look at the policies that continue to develop out of the Homeowners Loan Corporation, like the FHA, GI Bill, and also, quite frankly, most recently, the study and the work that we've done of the maps. 100 healthy start sites across the country. All of the areas that have high rates of Black infant mortality directly overlay with those areas
Just happen to be redlined areas.
that were previously redlined or yellow-lined areas, including Columbus.
So Roots work then, the way I'm hearing you talk about it, is grounded in a historical context of causation. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And as a result of that causation and the effects of that, we then now exist to stand in the gap to say what to families?
We do our best to try to make sure that we empower our families with the information and the knowledge that they can have to be able to make the best decision possible for them. We do our best to make sure that they have all of the information in regards to access to resources and why some of those resources aren't there for us as well. So that's always really important. It's not just about referring to the next social services agency that continues to look at us as if we're at a deficit. It's to be able to say these types of things. Have you asked this particular home, this loan origination bank institution, as to why it is that the interest rate is higher in this zip code for you to purchase a home than it is in a different zip code? I mean, those are the types of information that we're able to give. And then, so it pushes back on the system a bit.
What does an empowered family look like?
Wow.
Because you've used that phrase a few times. And I know we
almost
talk about
don't like, and I've talked to you about this too, because I almost don't like the word empowered, right? Because I think that that's still taking away someone else's power.
Right.
The powerful family, the family that finds their inner strength and the resources that they have with one another, really trust themselves. Like take for example, when we go into doing a direct service with our perinatal support doulas, and we're with a family throughout their pregnancy, or with them through the birth, or with them through postpartum. One of the things that I'll always say to the doulas is, you know that you've done your job when you are no longer needed in the room.
That's right. Work yourself out of a need to be needed.
Because they're advocating for themselves. You know, I get to see dads in there with their partners, and they're having a baby, and he's the one that's articulating and saying the things to the hospital staff that, you know, don't ask this question right now. Like, my wife is in the middle of a contraction. Like, this is not appropriate. Or I'm saying that we don't consent to this because we had this conversation with our doula before we came in here. So we're going to follow that. Just being able to see what that looks like when we, as the support people, get to support the family.
Right.
And do still continue to provide that level of advocacy when necessary. But really, when we get to watch that's working in and of itself.
So what else does Root do? I mean, so we're talking about power.
I don't know, Dorian. What else does Root do? Because we've been doing interviewing of me for quite a while.
I don't want to talk.
And I know you've really enjoyed doing that. But I'm really interested to know what it is that you feel is important about Root, and why it is that you continue doing this work.
I don't have a choice. I don't. And part of
I think you might better explain that for the audience.
I will. Part of who I am as a black man in this country, in this era, requires a certain accountability and responsibility. And so my entire career, my entire academic process, has all from wherever to now, has been focused on and situated in service and a loyalty and allegiance to my family, my community, and my people, folks who look like me. And so, you know, you'll have some that will say, well, that's this and that's that. And it's neither. It's really about being accountable to your center. And so the work that Root does for me, situated within family and focused on family, is the most powerful work that you can do. And so for me, not to do this work would be like me not loving myself. That would be stupid. And so I focus on it in that way. So are there other types of work that can happen that could fulfill those particular areas? Absolutely, because I've done those in my own space, in my own life. But this is the culmination of that. When you look at family, and you look at communities, and you look at all the relative life domains that are included there in terms of family planning and development, and child and rearing and parenting, and education and nutrition and housing and just critical thinking and civic engagement and all those things, the work that Root does helps to, I like empower, you like powerful. It's the same thing in my brain. We can talk about why there's a distinction there a little bit later. But it's still all about making sure that families are supported, helped, assisted with having all of the things that are needed to increase whatever it is they need to increase, want to increase, would like to increase in their particular lives. And I think the work that Root does is filling a gap that is typically left void. Because what we like to do a lot of times in this country and in this city is we like to act as if race and color or ethnicity or socioeconomics do not apply.
Right.
We like to act as if we can just. I love when people tell me that they don't see color. I love that statement because it's probably one of the. It's probably one of the dumbest statements I could ever hear in my life. So you just told me you don't see me.
Right.
That's really what you just said, and all of the nuances that go along with me, and so I do this work because, and you know this because we're in these rooms a lot together. Typically, we're the only black folks in the room.
Yeah,
let's just say it that way, and that has been your story, your entire career. It's been my story more often than not my entire career, and I've worked federal, state, local, whatever levels of government, and have done that both in public and private sector, and it is always. Probably 99% of the time in the rooms that I'm in, I'm the only lone little colored boy in the room who actually is going to say X, Y, and Z. Right. Same has been for you. So, when we converged and began to have these conversations, it was like, okay, wow, we get to create our own narrative here.
Absolutely.
We get to provide our own landscape and roadmap here, and we get to do it in support and in service of the folks who look like us, who need it the best. We really are needed the most. We really get to address inequity with Root, and we do that on a regular basis. So for me, there's no other focus for work right now. It's really about doing what it is. Let me even scratch that. You and I both understand that everyone is in each other's presence and or space for a purpose. We've known each other for 20-something years. Why now?
Right.
Why did this happen now on this topic after we've done the stuff that we've done, the work that we've done? Why converge now at this moment in 2017 about with all the other stuff that's going on? So we have to take a step back and take a look at that and really be intentional about engaging and converging for a purpose and for a reason. So for me, it's tied up in all of that. And I unapologetically do this work because it must be done. And I don't think anybody else can do it. I'll just throw it out there. I don't think anybody else can do it the way that we're doing it. And we're seeing that as we travel the country and have these conversations. We're seeing the deficits that exist in these rooms when we're having the conversations, when we're training the professionals that we train, be they medical professionals or non-medical professionals, be they elected officials or be they just general people in the community. Nobody else is doing this work.
It is interesting to notice how some of the concepts that we discuss and that we come up with seem to be such new information. And I know that it's not it's actually not as much of a new information point for our clients and for our folks that we're working with in our community. It's not new. The conversations are a little different, but it's not new. But it's with those that are supposed to be in these levels of expert professional engagement that are the ones that are saying they had no idea.
Well, and it's always, I mean, we were just in San Francisco, about 2 months ago? Well, you just came back from Cali last week.
I did.
Because that's what you do. You just go across the world. But when we were there, I remember watching the faces of the professionals in the room when we were out there doing grand rounds at wherever we were. In that conversation that we had with them, it was just interesting to watch the faces, as if, the slides we were talking about the origins of gynecology.
I think
we were talking at a medical institution. We were talking about the origins of gynecology, and the students didn't know.
Right.
They did not know. The professionals, the residents, the doctors did not know. Why is that? Why do you think that's not talked about or taught?
Because the narrative of history is always written on the side of the quote unquote winner. I mean, that's so cliche, but it's the reality.
No, how's it that the quote goes, history is written by the one who won the war.
Yes, I've heard
That's
that.
yeah, that's always cute to me.
And, you know, when we were in San Francisco, what really clicked for me was I understood why strategically we get put in those rooms.
Mm-hmm. Whether
Those
we like
that
to or
do
not.
it right, like those that understood and knew what was going on and why it was that we were purposefully chosen.
We got
to come
set
and
up, is
do
what you
that.
said.
I don't know that I would say a setup. I think that's.
I'm feeling set up now. Is what I'm asking the question.
But why it is that we're asked to come and do those things in certain spaces, and it's because it's not taught in medical school. I never heard any of that when I was in nursing school, not once. I didn't hear it until I was in my undergraduate program for African American and African Studies. I didn't hear it in high school. It wasn't part of anatomy and physiology classes. I mean, there was nothing about it that was discussed.
So, yeah, but and it won't be, and so that's why we continue to fill the gap and do the work that we do. So how do you think our families receive the work? How do you think we're impacting them?
I mean, I could answer that in two different ways. How we're impacting them.
I think it's a good thing. Good stuff.
The testimonies and the stuff that they've had to say is that it's good. I mean, a lot of the first clients that we got were all from word of mouth, and it was because of folks that I had worked with in the 16, 17 years previous to starting at Root, to those that came into Root as an organization and then were referred, and are most of the time they're saying things like, especially because we get a lot of clients that have already had a previous birth experience.
That's right.
They're coming to us because they want something different, and they're saying that it's different.
How are the doctors and medical professionals receiving us?
That
in the
depends.
hospital?
It's extremes. It's
You
extremes.
should have saw your face right there. Your eyes got all big.
It's extremes.
Okay.
It's either they really, 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 really love us, and they know that we're there with a purpose and that we know what it is that we're doing, and they respect our autonomy in that space, or it's the flip side of that, and people become verbally and physically violent.
Yeah, that happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. It is. So when as we move forward as an organization, I know we've talked about the birthing center we want to have.
Yes.
I know we've talked about the child care facility we want to put together.
Right.
We've talked about the community gardens that we want to put in place that are intentionally for the families that we're serving.
Right. While you're trying to strategically plan and run operations, I keep coming up with more things that I want us
What's next?
to do.
What's next?
That looks great. Can you do that? I want this too.
So all this stuff is in play. What type of policy changes would you like to see occur right now? Give me 30 seconds of the top 3 items that you would love to see change right now.
I think that there needs to be a reallocation of funding, not to implicit bias training, but to absolute anti-racist, in particular anti-Black racism training for all medical and healthcare professionals. And it can't be just a checklist. It has to be ongoing with a certain amount of hours per year.
Interesting. Okay. Number 2.
I would like to see a reallocation of funding that goes to what are considered crisis pregnancy centers to actually go to community-based organizations like ours, or like Birthing Beautiful Communities in Cleveland, other organizations that are similar to ours across the country, so that we can actually get started with the work of early prenatal care, which is often what we do anyway when we get to see our clients when they first become pregnant at 5 and 6 weeks, but most of the clinics in the area don't see them until they're anywhere after 9.
Yeah, don't get me started on that.
Right, we don't have enough time.
Number 3.
I would want to see actual policy development, and this is general because I only have a third.
Okay.
I would like to see actual policy development that would disrupt and dismantle previous policies that were put into place that created the consequences of the social determinants of health, and reallocate funding in an equitable way so that we can have things that would allow us to develop
That's a
generational
long
wealth.
Number 3 there, lady.
At the very least, we know the generational wealth comes from being able to have home ownership. Shift that funding that you put into rental subsidies and these programs to quote unquote help us and allow us to be in a space to be able to develop our own equity so that we can have it for generation after generation.
And you think those 3 things will address and or significantly decrease the mortality issues that we're seeing.
Absolutely. And according to the maps and the research that we've done, that's what it says it will do.
Hey, brought up data. Maps, research, data, right? That's real stuff, right?
It's real stuff. It's the stuff that they say you have to use to validate.
So how large is Root as an organization?
How large is it?
Yeah.
We have approximately 20 active people that are within our organization. That includes administration and our perinatal support persons.
Are you satisfied with the growth, with the movement, the trajectory of the organization?
I think it's amazing, and I also think that we could
That's
do
why
a lot more.
You freak out every day when it's moving forward.
I'm amazed and I'm humbled all the time by the reception that we receive from our community, from some of the national attention that we've gotten from the partnership and the alliances, like with Black Mamas Matter Alliance, and being able to develop those relationships. I am consistently humbled by that.
Yeah,
and
it's good stuff.
It also means that I feel that from a real place and weight.
Not like warm and fuzzy feel,
Warm
or heavy weight of the world feel.
Both. It's a both and. It's a warm and fuzzy feel, and I know that we can do it, and also the weight of wanting to make sure that we grow when we do it, and that we expand in a way that's going to best serve us.
Well, like the great philosopher Sean Carter said.
Oh, here we go.
Difficult takes a day, impossible just takes a week. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. So, what are give me your closing thought is in terms of what you want folks to know about Root. No, I got to do that.
Closing thought.
I have to do that.
You have literally made me talk through most of this 40 minutes.
You are Black woman. You are enough. You are autonomous. I can't make you do anything.
You are a strong Black man, fully capable of articulating for himself.
Yes, ma'am. I can. So, ask me the question.
What are your closing thoughts?
I
want to know, what are your closing thoughts, and what do you see for us?
Oh, I see Root being the premier example and model for how community-based organizations engage social challenges within their communities. Period. End of sentence. Everything that we're doing is scalable and repeatable. There is no issue there other than allocating the resources for us to be able to do that. So I would like to see a Root presence in every urban community in this country. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see Root in positions to promulgate rules for state departments and communities.
Nobody can see me sweating right now.
I'd like to see all of this stuff. I'd like to see us active in policy recommendations moving forward, not just rooms of old, middle-aged white men and women making these decisions for us who are elected folks. I don't want to see that any longer.
I want to snap it.
Because there's no excuse for us not to engage those folks who actually have boots on the ground and know the work and know the scholarship and know the research and know how to deliver the services. I don't want to see any more empty conversations and commissions and task forces that just produce reports that sit on shelves. Right. I don't want to deal with that anymore. So I think that Root is a leader in this space. I think that Root is a leader in any of these policy conversations that exist. So I want to see us in that way. In a more practical sense, the birth centers, I want to see those in place because we know what we can do for ourselves and our communities. I want to see housing supports. I want to see those nutritional balances in place. So for me, we are amazing. We are the best. We're going to continue to move forward and do that. Answer your question?
I think that's rather clear.
You sure?
Yeah.
You sure? And let me end with this. Well, I'll end my statement with this, and then you say whatever it is. You say, because you always like to have the last word anyway. So, well, I said it.
That might have been a dig.
I said it.
That might have been a dig.
It is. But I know for a fact I would not want to be doing this work with anyone else other than you. I wouldn't do it with anyone else other than you. You are the standing rock partner that anybody in this work would want to have. So I'll close with that and say thank you.
I think that was on purpose to make me be speechless.
It was.
All I have left to say is the same. I really am at a loss for words. I want this date to go on the calendar again. It's Wednesday, July 17th, 2019.